Gaius Octavius, later known as Augustus, is a figure often overshadowed by his great-uncle and adoptive father, Julius Caesar. He was the man who brought about the downfall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. This video will be split into 5 sections, where I examine his personality, early life, rise to power, achievements, and my thoughts on what we can learn from him. I'll mention that Augustus was actually called Caesar by his contemporaries, but I'll be referring to him as Octavian or Augustus to avoid confusion. Augustus was described to be ambitious, intelligent, a man who can be cruel, but also wise and fair. His cruelty is mostly attributed to his behavior during his ascension to power. He killed anyone who posed a political threat to him, including the 17-year-old Caesarion, who was allegedly the son of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. It is possible that Augustus showed no mercy to his enemies after seeing how Caesar's assassination was committed by people that he had spared. After consolidating his power, Augustus turned into a fair and moderate ruler. During his rule, Rome was transformed into a stable and prosperous empire spanning from modern-day Portugal to Syria. Roman historian Suetonius had this to say about Augustus. He was unusually handsome and exceedingly graceful at all periods of his life, though he cared nothing for personal adornment. His expression, whether in conversation or when he was silent, was calm and mild. His teeth were wide apart, small and ill-kept. His hair was slightly curly and inclining to golden. His eyebrows met. His complexion was between dark and fair. He was short of stature, but this was concealed by the fine proportion and symmetry of his figure. Octavian was born on the Palatine Hill in the city of Rome on September 23, 63 BC. His given name was Gaius Octavius Thurinus. His family name was Octavii. They were a respected plebeian family, but later became patrician thanks to their connections with Julius Caesar. Octavian's mother was Atia, who was the nephew of Julius Caesar, making Caesar the great-uncle of Octavian. Octavian's father was also named Gaius Octavius. His highest achievement was becoming the governor of Macedonia. He died in 59 BC, when Octavian was just 4 years old. Octavian grew up with formal aristocratic training, learning how to speak both Latin and Greek, and also taking oratory lessons. He first caught the attention of Julius Caesar when delivering the funeral oration for his grandmother, who also happened to be Caesar's sister. After Caesar defeated Pompey in the Battle of Pharsalus, Octavian was 15 years old, and Caesar appointed Octavian as the prefect of Rome. Octavian would accompany Caesar on many trips, including a campaign to Hispania. Caesar later sent Octavian and some of his friends, including Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa and Gaius Maecenas, to Macedonia to study. He had also nominated Octavian to become the master of the horse, basically the second most powerful position in Rome after the dictator himself. Unfortunately, this promotion never came when Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC. Caesar's will dictated that he will adopt Octavian as his son and heir, and therefore all of his estate and power belonged to him. Octavian immediately sailed for Rome, despite his advisors telling him to hide in Macedonia. When Octavian sailed back to Italy, he learned about the contents of Caesar's will and decided that he will carry on Caesar's name and political legacy. He changed his name to Gaius Julius Caesar and claimed 700 million sesterces that was supposedly kept for a potential war with Parthia. Even though he was just 19 years old at the time, he demonstrated strong leadership skills, and with his newly acquired funds, he was able to raise a small army on his march through Italy to Rome. Many of his soldiers were Caesar's veterans. When Octavian arrived in Rome, the situation was complicated. Mark Antony granted amnesty to the assassins, and 2 of the main assassins, Marcus Brutus and Cassius Longinus, fled to the eastern provinces and assumed control there. Mark Antony was consul, but he had a terrible relationship with the Senate. During this time, Octavian continued to build his private army, even winning over 2 of Antony's legions with monetary incentive. After his consulship ended, Antony decided that Rome was getting too hot for him, and retired to Cisalpine Gaul to be a governor. However, after getting to Cisalpine Gaul, the man in charge, Decimus Brutus, a different Brutus by the way, refused to give up the province. Antony then began a siege. Decimus Brutus was one of Caesar's assassins, therefore the Senate was on his side. Peace talks failed, and the Senate declared Antony an enemy of the state. The Senate didn't have a sizable army to fight Antony, but Octavian did. Octavian agreed to team up with the Senate, and both consuls of the year 43 BC went with him to Cisalpine Gaul. Antony was defeated at the Battle of Mutina, and the battle resulted in the death of both consuls. After the victory, the Senate asked Octavian to give control of his army to Decimus Brutus. Octavian disagreed and then suddenly changed sides. He demanded consulship since both consuls are now dead, and also to repeal the order that declared Antony an enemy of the state. The Senate refused, and in turn, Octavian marched his army onto Rome. The Senate didn't have an army, so they were forced to comply with all of Octavian's demands. Meanwhile, Antony had formed an alliance with a man called Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, who controlled the province of Hispania. Instead of fighting them, Octavian decided to join them, forming the Second Triumvirate. They set in motion a series of proscriptions where 300 senators and 2,000 equites were labeled as outlaws and all of their possessions confiscated. This was not exactly an ethical thing to do, but they probably did this to make some quick cash for their upcoming war with Brutus and Longinus. Around this time, Caesar was elevated to the status of a god, and Octavian added Divi Filius to his name, meaning the son of God. Octavian and Antony set off to fight the assassins. The decisive battle of Philippi in 42 BC resulted in the suicide of both Brutus and Longinus. The triumvirate then divided up the provinces of Rome. Octavian got the western provinces, while Antony got the eastern provinces. Lepidus was the weaker man in the triumvirate and ended up getting only the province of North Africa. In 36 BC, a conflict in Sicily resulted in Lepidus's men defecting to Octavian and the expulsion of Lepidus from the triumvirate. Now the empire was divided between Octavian and Antony. There were some efforts of compromise between the two men. For example, Octavian gave his sister Octavia to Mark Antony to be his wife. However, when it comes to political power, there can only be one sun in the sky. Antony eventually sent Octavia back to Rome and instead focused on his relationship with Cleopatra, who he has been boning for quite a while now. Octavian used this act to spread propaganda saying how Antony has lost his Roman ways. Octavian's efforts succeeded, and in 32 BC, the Senate declared war on Cleopatra's regime in Egypt, which basically means that they declared war on Mark Antony. After Octavian and his generals won the naval battle of Actium, Cleopatra and Mark Antony committed suicide, leaving Octavian as the most powerful man in the Republic. Octavian did not become dictator immediately. He had to obtain his power piecemeal. After a series of political maneuvers known as the First and Second Settlements, Octavian was able to consolidate power under the so-called Principate, which is basically a dictatorship that preserves some illusions of a republic. To avoid looking like a dictator, Augustus stylized himself as Princeps Civitatis, meaning the first citizen of the state. During this time, Octavian changed his name to Imperator Caesar Divi Filius Augustus. In the year 19 BC, Augustus was officially given Imperium Maius, meaning supreme power. Augustus ushered in a golden age for the Roman civilization. Roman economy, arts, and agriculture flourished. The Roman Empire continued its expansion under Augustus, conquering territories in modern-day Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Slovenia, Albania, Croatia, Hungary, and Serbia. Augustus was able to negotiate a temporary peace with the Parthians, who had been at war with Romans for hundreds of years. Augustus created an institutionalized police and firefighting force and established the Praetorian Guard, which would become an important political faction in the Roman Empire. Augustus made tax reforms which stabilized tax rates and greatly increased Rome's treasury. Augustus passed laws to raise birth rates, which included making adultery illegal, offering tax incentives for families with 3 or more children, and penalties for childless marriages. Augustus strictly followed his own laws and even exiled his own daughter, Julia the Elder, for adultery. There were many major construction projects during the reign of Augustus, including the Temple of Caesar, the Bath of Agrippa, and the Forum of Augustus. He also supported the construction of the famous Pantheon, which still stands today. There were also numerous minor construction projects, and Augustus claimed to have built or restored 82 temples in a single year. One interesting change Augustus made directly impacts our society today. He changed the name of the 8th month of the year to August. In conclusion, in the 40 years Augustus ruled as an emperor, Rome was transformed into a stable, peaceful, and prosperous empire. He set the foundations for a civilization which would be more or less peaceful for more than 200 years. Augustus died in modern-day Nola, Italy on August 19, 14 AD at the age of 75. There are a few variations on his death. Some say Augustus died from natural causes of old age, others say that his wife poisoned him, and others say that Augustus committed suicide with the help of his wife so that there would be a smooth transition of power from himself to Tiberius, his adopted son and second Roman emperor. Publicly, his last words were, "I found Rome, a city of bricks, and left it a city of marble." One possible variation of his real last words were, "Have I played the part well? Then applaud as I exit." From Augustus, we see an ambitious young man who fought his way to become the world's most powerful man through a combination of risk-taking, political and military skill, and of course, luck. From his actions, we see a man who can be brutal and merciless, but not brutal to the point of a psychopath. Augustus never killed for amusement or out of anger or impulse, but killed only for political reasons. He was a leader, raising armies from the age of 19, a capable ruler, proven by his 40 years of stable and prosperous rule. He was extraordinarily wealthy, but cared little for luxuries and did not squander money. In fact, he donated large sums of money to the Roman treasury to finance the construction of public buildings. He kept an open mind to art and philosophy, and allowed some free speech. There are quite a few things we can learn from the life of Augustus. First, age is only a number. Augustus was putting his life on the line competing for political power before he even turned 20. For those of you guys watching who are in high school or college, don't feel like you're too young to achieve anything. Maturity is not a product of aging, but a product of life experience. 2. Fortune favors the bold. There's no doubt that luck was on Octavian's side many times during his ascension to power. However, I would argue the reason Octavian became the emperor is not because of luck, but mainly because of his ambition and willingness to take risks. He was badly injured numerous times and probably had many near-death experiences. That didn't stop him from achieving his goals. 3. Have patience and keep your ego in check. After Octavian defeated Mark Antony, he didn't try to grab supreme power immediately. He was patient and made deals with the Senate to consolidate his power. Even after obtaining supreme power, he did not ask the people to worship him, but rather presented himself as a servant to the Roman civilization. This garnered more respect from the people, and is probably one of the reasons he was able to rule peacefully for 40 years. I think you can tell that I have a positive opinion of Augustus. I believe that he was a great man who made a tremendous impact on the world. What is your opinion of Augustus? Do you think he was a good ruler? Or maybe you think of him as a tyrant? Do some research of your own and let me know what you think. Thank you for watching.